Hey, Amanda.
Hey, sister.
I tell you what, I thought having Chris on as a guest last week was a blast. Is he not like a walking Wikipedia when it comes to Indiana Jones?
He knows everything.
And let me tell you, I needed his expertise on this one to get us through.
Yes, we did. It would have been short and sweet without his help.
That's
It
true.
was so much fun, and I'm glad that he had the opportunity to talk about all of his favorite 80s film, and his hat was everything.
His hat was everything.
And I think he had fun. Did he have fun?
He had a great time. He did. And I will say this, Indiana Jones, as I like to call it, even though I know it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was absolutely an iconic film. But this week, we're diving into a movie that has an iconic and unforgettable dance scene from the 80s. You know the one.
I know what you're talking about, that unforgettable moment. Some tighty-whities, a little rock and roll, and a slide across the floor. Not a slide across the floor, the slide across the floor.
Yep. Well, let's take some old records off the shelf. Here we go.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy, and this is Real Sisters Rewind.
Join us as we go back to the 80s.
Welcome to Real Sisters Rewind, back to the 80s, a podcast for movie lovers who wish films were as good now as they were back then. If you've been joining us in past podcasts, thanks and welcome back. If it's your first time joining us, well, you should know we're two sisters who adore great movies, especially those from the 80s. We're here to rewatch and relive some of our best movie memories. I'm Missy.
And I'm Amanda. If you're liking Real Sisters Rewind, we would so appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Subscribe and review to help new listeners find the show.
Today, we're rewinding back to 1983 with a movie that really, Amanda, it put Tom Cruise on the map, Risky Business. It's a mix of comedy, drama, and a whole lot of bad decisions, and we can't wait to dive in. But I have to ask you, Amanda, when you watched it, did you have some popcorn?
I did have popcorn. I had my Old Faithful popcorn and M&Ms, but I will tell you what I did. It was buttered popcorn, microwave.
Always.
Well, right. But I melted some butter, added it to the butter to make it more buttery, and then did my M&Ms. So they were like melty and buttery and salty.
Oh my goodness.
That's Old Faithful.
That is Old Faithful. I had smoked paprika on my microwave buttered popcorn, but it's funny you say that because I was thinking it's a little dry. It needs a little extra butter. So I'll have to do that next time.
Before we jump into all the trouble, and I do mean all the trouble Joel gets into, we have a special guest joining us today to talk risky business, real fans. My dear friend, partner in crime, Allison DeViney. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop, yay!
Now, Allison is not only my friend, but she is a very talented lady. She created our logo for this podcast. And in fact, I think she should just open a general craft store and just make crafts and sell them. One day we're going to make that happen. And speaking of that logo, as a reminder, we are sending Real Sister stickers designed by our special guest for 5-star reviews. So take a screenshot of your review and email it to us at hello@realsistersrewind.com. And we will send you one of those cool stickers of our logo that Allison herself designed. And Allison, being on with us today, is also a fellow child of the 80s and will be able to add another perspective to all these shenanigans we are getting into today on this podcast.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you.
Yes, we are. And Allison, I have to say thank you for all the work you put into that logo. We love it. It's fun, and it definitely represents the 80s. And ladies, we are going back to 1983. So let's head back there now and see what was going on in the world and share some fascinating facts about the film.
So let's talk 1983. Allison, we always start with our own experiences seeing the film we are rewinding. I'm thinking about when this film came out, August 5th, 1983, how old I was and if I saw it in theaters. And I for sure know I did not, because I was just shy of turning 7, August 5th, 1983. So this was not a theater movie for me. It was rated R at that, that time of my life. But I think I did see it several years later, like probably in junior high on VHS would be my guess. What about
Same
you,
for
Allison?
me.
Do you remember?
Yes, I was about 9 years old at the time, so I know I didn't see it then. I do think I saw it a few years later. A big Friday night tradition in our house is my mother would go to the local Video City video store
Love it.
and would rent a VCR that had a wire remote and some movies, and we would sit as far away as the wire would let us get from the television and watch movies on a Friday night. And I think that I saw it a few years later during one of those super fun Friday nights.
Wait, when you say
Great
we,
tradition.
I know. When you say we, like the whole family, or we?
No, that was just me and my younger brother.
And explain to the youngsters that might be listening to this, what would be a wire remote? What would that be?
It's so sad. A wire remote is a remote control that was literally attached by a wire,
like phones used to be,
to the device, to the VCR, and the wire wasn't that long. I always wondered how close they thought our furniture was away from the television, because there was no way that you could get from the TV to the chair with that remote control.
It's like a living room or something.
But we thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, because you didn't have to move to change the channels or to operate the controls. Absolutely.
If you sat close enough.
All right. Well, you young too. I was 15 and I didn't see it in theaters though, because it was rated R. And I do remember though, when it came out on VCR, speaking of which, a year later, we had a Oak Grove store that was just like a little convenience store in our little community. And they had added on a little room with VCR tapes. And they had the most popular movies. And I remember when it came out, seeing that iconic cover with Tom Cruise and the shades, and he was so cute, and I had heard all about the movie, and so I rented it and went home and watched it. And I have to say, I'm just going to throw this out there as we get into the movie. When I think of R ratings in the 80s, I tend
100%.
to think of them pretty mild by today's standards. But I was like, as I watched it this time, like, this movie legit earned its R rating, right?
For sure.
Like, did y'all agree with that? Like,
yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. But I do have to say one funny thing about your VCR, the renting the VHS tapes, the place that you're talking about, it was a gas station.
Yeah.
That added on the video.
Yeah, it was a convenience store with a gas station. They added a room on for videos. This was before Blockbusters and everything.
Yeah, that it wasn't like just like a little market. I mean, this was a gas station.
Yeah. So Risky Business had a runtime of 1 hour and 39 minutes, and it had actually 3 nominations for awards. one of which was the 1984 Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical for Tom Cruise. And this was a big deal, ladies, because this was a breakout role for him. And I went to take a peek at some of his competitors for this. It was a bunch of old men, and it was Tom Cruise and Eddie Murphy from Trading Places. And the man who actually won was Michael Caine from the movie Educating Rita.
I thought you were going to say it was Eddie Murphy.
No, I would have.
I was going to be like,
Yeah.
yes. But you know what? I don't think Tom Cruise has ever won. He may have won a Golden Globe. I'll look and see, and we can verify. But he's never won an Academy Award, I don't think.
Not for Born on the 4th of July? No, he didn't win that. I don't know. I will tell you there was one other award that the movie was up for that I'm going to mention. It was another one, but the one is a TV Land Award. And this was the award. The best movie for a dance sequence that you would reenact in your living room.
And he didn't win?
Nope. Guess what movie beat it out? And by the way, it wasn't necessarily in the same year. It must have been the first time TV Land did these awards, and they just had kind of a big mixture of movies. What other dance scene would have won for being reenacted? Although I wouldn't say you'd do this one in your living room.
It has to be Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. Yeah. The jump. Yeah.
But yeah, they're not the same.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, 1983 was a year of big changes and cultural shifts. Michael Jackson's Thriller was taking over the airwaves. As we've said many times, like it's been in several of the episodes we've talked about. And that makes sense because I feel like it did just like kind of rule the 80s. The final episode of MASH aired, becoming the most watched television event in history. Y'all, I hated MASH.
Me too.
I've never seen an episode, but I hated it.
Hated it.
Commercials. Did you actually watch it though? Because I haven't, and I hate it.
No, the sound of it just was.
Yes, just nothing about
horrifying.
It appealed to me.
I don't even know if it was similar to that.
I couldn't have even hummed the music. But
well, it's because it made me nauseous. You would hear the music and you would see that like grainy, and it was like they're in army gear, and it was that blonde-headed woman that looks like the lady from the Muppets, and you would hear that music, and I would get like, it was the worst.
Who knew that it was the most watched television event in history at that time?
I don't know, but I hated it. It was awful.
Like
around that time, also everybody was quoting "Say Hello to My Little Friend" from Scarface. I won't imitate him because I can't do it justice. Reaganomics was in full swing, and pop culture was a mix of neon fashion, big hair, and synthesizer music.
Oh, Allison, that makes me think when I hear synthesizer music of the keyboards. Did you have a keyboard?
Of course, that had the little buttons up at the top where you could do like, what was it? There was like polka.
Yes.
Bossa Nova.
Yes.
Oh, God. And you know who was on People magazine this week? Diana Ross. The headline was "The Concert, Controversy, and the Connection to Michael Jackson."
Oh, Michael Jackson just is in the news in the 80s. And speaking of cultural shifts, Risky Business wasn't just a teen movie. Director Paul Brickman actually wanted to explore, and I quote, the pressures of the American materialistic culture of the time, right? Y'all, he did this through the eyes of a suburban teenager. Like, I don't know much about Paul Brickman, but seems a little odd to me.
Yeah. I was like,
sorry to interrupt you, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
Another thing that seemed very popular at this time in history based on these movies was questionable parenting. But we'll get to
Yes.
that, I think.
That is a really good point. That could be another theme he's exploring.
Yes,
Questionable
maybe
parenting
so. That's a great thought.
for
Yes.
sure.
Interesting.
But let's talk about that Tom Cruise.
Ah.
He was not a superstar yet. But I mean, he is now I would say one of the biggest movie stars in the world, but he had not been yet launched into that stratosphere. And keep in mind, y'all, this was way before any controversy about Tom Cruise. And I do just have to name that because I know that there are people that have feelings about Tom Cruise, but for the actor that he is, I'm able to separate that.
I am too. I have to say,
Absolutely.
I love him despite
He's a
any
great actor.
craziness.
I know he's a great actor and man, he's good looking.
He is so good looking and so charismatic on screen. And he had me from Hello in Risky Business. I'm just gonna say
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. But so this was before any of that. In fact, y'all, he was, I think, 21 when it came out, but he had not even yet joined the Church of Scientology. I don't think that came until like 86, maybe. So yeah, he was just becoming a star at this time. And he was just really becoming that go-to leading man in Hollywood. And why not? Interestingly, he insisted on doing some of his own stunts for the movie, which, as we know, he continued doing that over the years. From like Mission Impossible, I think he still does his own stunts. But he did the scene where where he is chased by Guido in his dad's Porsche to really set the scene for his action-packed career, where he, like I said, continues doing his own stunts. I think that's something he really thrives on. But here's another cool thing for y'all. Did you know that he competed with several other leading men for this role? Listen to these guys that auditioned and just think about what this would be like with some of these men.
Okay.
Okay, so John Cusack.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage.
Absolutely not.
No. Now this one I could see. Michael J. Fox.
Oh, he could pull it off. Yeah.
He could have done it. And I mean, he was such a thing then. I don't think Tom Hanks.
No.
He's too
It's
much
Woody.
of a goodie. Yeah, right? That's
Yes.
Woody. And at this time, I don't know if it was exactly the same time, but Tom Hanks was in Bosom Buddies.
Which I loved. I
was
loved
great.
Bosom Buddies. It was my favorite
too.
sitcom. I loved it. I laughed so hard. Well, the film had a major impact on fashion, ladies. As a matter of fact, Cruise's iconic look in his underwear, whitey tighties, as you called them, Amanda, and a button down shirt with his socks, it became an unforgettable image. As a matter of fact, I went before we started recording this podcast and I was going to wear my husband's shirt, but it was too big. But I was going to get in the moment. But it set the stage for fashion. At that time, the shirt dress came in to popularity and people would, women would belt it.
Like a button down?
Like a button down. Oh, yes. With Roman sandals that would tie up your legs. Absolutely. And that scene where he lip syncs to Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll, y'all, it was completely improvised by Cruise, which it just adds to the charm and the spontaneity of it all.
Yes, I read that actually. I read that in the script, it just said Joel dances to music. And
I actually saw him talking in an interview earlier where he said he used to sing that song as a little boy. So it probably had just come naturally to him.
That's a testament to what a good actor he is, that he can improvise that sort of scene that now is so iconic.
Yeah, it makes you go, oh, well, I get it. Because if you improvise that, then also, I will say, talking about the button downs, back to that, Allison, you wear button downs a lot. You wear that. I mean, not as a dress, but like with jeans, you almost always wear the button down. It's very your style.
I do like it. A major fashion statement was the sunglasses Joel wears. You can see them on the movie poster.
Yes.
They are the iconic Ray-Ban Wayfarer model. Annual sales of Wayfarers were declining as of 1983, but skyrocketed an unbelievable 2,000% after the movie's release. That's amazing.
That is amazing. I actually like did a double take when you said that, because I'm like 2,000%. And I don't think that they ever stopped being popular after
No,
that. Like
they're a
everybody still
classic
wears them.
now. And look,
Thank you, Tom Cruise.
thank you.
Yeah.
And every man wanted to be him at that time, or every young boy, high school boy, college boy wanted to be him, and every girl wanted to be with a boy who
With
looked
him,
like
uh-huh.
him. So no, 2,000%, although it's shocking, is understandable.
Well, you know, we always like to talk about the music, because the music in the 80s was everything, movies and music. The
Yes.
soundtrack of Risky Business did not let us down. It was a big deal. So Tangerine, it's hard for me to say that. Tangerine Dream was a German electronic band, and they scored the film. And that's where you get that sort of dreamy, synth heavy sound that defined that 80s music. But big names were on the soundtrack as well. Prince, Bruce Springsteen, and Phil Collins are all on the soundtrack. In fact, you can even, there's one part where he's whistling. I can feel it coming in the air tonight, and it's kind of slow, but that song's in it in a really steamy part. But the best song, and it also happened to be the #1 song on the American Top 40 this same week that the movie was released. What a cool coincidence. Was Every Breath You Take by The Police. Amazing. Missy, do you, because like with me being that young, all these songs would have been on the radio and I would have known they were popular, and Allison for you too. But Missy, you being like 15, this would have been the kind of music y'all were buying the tapes to.
Absolutely. The cassettes, you'd put them
Yeah.
in and you'd rewind to hear it over and over and over. Yeah. I mean, the music of this time was extraordinary. It was really, I mean, it was the definition of my high school years for sure.
Love The Police.
Yes, love all of this music.
It's
Fantastic.
good stuff.
So good. And this film, as I said earlier, it delves into some serious themes like capitalism and moral dilemmas and a loss of innocence. That director Brickman was not afraid to push boundaries. And as I mentioned earlier, he was hoping to create a movie that was not just entertaining, but he wanted it to be thought provoking.
I mean, I guess, but for the teens it was marketed to,
I
I don't
know.
know that it would have really been that thought provoking.
I totally agree.
Like, I don't think they would have understood the capitalism and all that stuff.
No, it's too
No,
much.
not at
Too
all.
much.
And just one more fun, or as you ladies say, fascinating fact: the Porsche 928 in the movie became almost as famous as Tom Cruise. After the film's release, sales of the car, just like the Wayfarers, skyrocketed because everyone wanted to be just as cool as Joel Goodson.
Missy,
That's hard to do.
you're right. That's hard to do. And you got to be rolling in the bucks to be cool with the Wayfarers and the Porsche. But Missy, do you remember our cousin in the 80s that had a Porsche around this time?
I do. It actually wasn't too long after this movie was
I figured
released.
when I remembered
Yeah.
it, I was like, it probably was around the same time. And I have to tell Allison and our real fans, and any of our family members that weren't alive or don't remember, on the back of his Porsche, he had a license plate that said, "Be jammin'."
Yep. Yes, he did. Cool
Be
cat.
jammin'.
Cool cat.
That is cool. Do you think he got the Porsche because of this movie?
I was wondering that too. What do you think, Missy?
I think he got the Porsche because it was a status symbol, and maybe the fact that Porsches had become a status symbol.
Yeah.
from the movie. So it
Yes.
may have contributed to it, but for sure, because it was a status symbol. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's fantastic.
Well, isn't it crazy how much influence movies can have on what we all think is cool? And it's the same way now. I mean, I don't know if it's so much movies now as it is social media, but same idea. Joel's story is more than just about looking cool. It's about how one seemingly harmless decision can set off a chain of events that spirals out of control. Kind of like you were talking about earlier, Allison, when we were just starting this podcast before we hit record.
You're exactly right. And so I'm just going to say this, ladies, buckle up. It's time to just see how much trouble Tom Cruise's character Joel gets himself into. It's going to be a wild and risky ride. All right, so let's get into it. Joel Goodson is just your typical overachieving high school student, almost like a goody two shoes, I'd say, y'all. He's living in the wealthy suburbs of Chicago. His dad has big plans for him, Princeton University. But Joel's not entirely sold on the idea.
Right. When his parents go away on a trip, Joel's friend Miles, played by Curtis Armstrong, convinces him to cut loose. And we can tell that this is not something he's done before because he's really pushing him to do it. And this is where things kind of start to spiral out of control.
Wait,
Allison,
didn't he play Booger on Revenge of the Nerds? And I recognize his other friend too. What had he been on?
Yes, that is Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. In fact, Eric watched this with me and immediately was like, that's Booger. But the other friend was on that show, Perfect Strangers, and his name was Balky. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Great show. That was a great show.
And I believe his name was Bronson Pinshot. I'm not sure I'm saying it correctly, but he was Balky from Perfect Strangers.
Oh my gosh. So funny. All right. So I have to stop here and ask you, were you ever left by yourself for a weekend when you were in high school? And what type of outcomes were there? I wasn't. I was never left for a weekend by myself in high school.
Guess who was?
I'm sure you were because you were the second child. I was the first child. So spill the beans.
I was left out of town. Also, our mom, who was an amazing mom, you've heard us talk about her, but she was newly married when I was a junior in high school. And I think they went on some fun little weekend trips. And we did have access to our house. Nothing ever crazy happened. I remember one time specifically, I was a senior and we had some people over. I say we, it was my house, but I wrote my friends into it. We had people over, but nothing too crazy happened. It wasn't that eventful, but it was definitely not like what we should have been doing or would have been okayed by any adults. You weren't ever left by yourself, Allison? That kind of surprises me.
I, like you, Missy, was the oldest. So I was never left alone by myself, but my younger brother was left alone, except for in my care.
Yes.
So the parents were gone, but I was there and I did let him have a party and it was amazing.
What a great big sister you are. I have a story though. I was
going to say I thought you were going to say you had been left. Yeah.
No, I was never left at our house because you were so much younger. I just wasn't probably mature enough. I could have maybe taken care of myself, but mom wasn't going to trust me with the baby. But my best friend in high school was the baby. She had a brother who was 2 years older. And her parents went out of town once. And we were going to have a little party. And the party got bigger and bigger and bigger. And two things I'll never forget. When the night was over, finally, after like neighbors had called and people had gotten stuck in the driveway and all this, we're cleaning up. and someone had gotten beer cans and gone into her mama and daddy's closet and put empty beer cans like in their pockets, in the pockets of their like coats and shirts and skirts. And we're going back up to the upstairs that night to go to bed, and a picture of her family had been knocked off the wall, and there was a crack all the way down, and it was across her mother's face. And I remember I held it up to Dana and I said, "You better take a good look at this, sister, because it's the last time you're going to see your mama smile for a while." And it was a wild party. I mean, not wild in anything beyond like what high schoolers would do, nothing like risky business, but yeah, so I guess I was kind of a part of that vicariously.
Did you get caught? Did y'all get caught?
Well, so our mom was actually out of town too, and our grandmother was keeping us. And so we had told the Granny Bell that we were going to Dana's house to wash clothes. And I got in trouble because we got back much later to the house than we had planned. And Granny Bell was asleep, but the next morning she got onto me for being late. It was not my proudest moment as a daughter or a big sister, but it made for a great memory and a great story on our podcast.
That's hilarious. Have y'all ever left your kids alone?
Yes,
I have.
I left my oldest alone as a senior for a very short period of time. He couldn't leave to go on a trip with the rest of us because of football.
I
we left him alone,
remember.
but he was right, but he was very well occupied the whole time. So I wasn't too worried.
Well, I left my youngest at home, and it was right when we moved into this new house, and he had just a couple of friends over. And ironically, it really wasn't a party. It was just a few guys, but I guess they were throwing my pillows, and one of the pillows from my couch hit my brand new lamp. I had matching lamps, and Morgan tells the story of he's just panicked and he looks at the lamp and he sees Hobby Lobby, and he's like, heading out to Hobby Lobby the next day. And he was like, "Mom, God was with me. I found the exact lamp." So I came home and had no clue until he told me later that week, I think. But I never left my oldest at home with my youngest, never left Michael with Morgan. But so I didn't think I was going to have stories for that. I had forgotten about those.
Mm-hmm. See?
All right. So on the first night that Joel is home alone, he's by himself, he decides to raid the liquor cabinet. He's blasting music. And of course, he is dancing around in his underwear. And I know we've already talked about it, but I could just say, whatever the director's plans were for wanting this movie to be, this scene is the movie to me. Like, come on.
Just put it on
repeat. Get any
repeat.
better. Just repeat. Yes, I absolutely loved it.
He's adorable. It's iconic. It's played on, I feel like, when there's, movie montage. This is always a clip that's in there. It's just a classic.
It is. It's fantastic. And you can really see in that moment his desire to have a little bit of independence. There's a scene where he's face down on the sofa and he's kind of flailing his arms and legs a little bit because he's still a kid, but he really, really, really wants a taste of that independence. It's great.
And he was tightly wound, I'd say, before, right? And he's like letting it loose a little bit, which was great, but it's going to go a little to the extremes.
Well, we could stay here talking about Tom and his undies, but back to the movie, Miles takes it up a notch. Booger. Speaking of him taking it a little too far, Miles, the friend that is pushing him to, let loose a little bit, gets him, having him take it up a notch by calling a prostitute on Joel's behalf. But when Jackie, who turns out to be a male crossdresser, arrives, Joel panics. This is not what he was expecting. So he ends up paying him just to leave. He does like invite him in the kitchen. They're chatting.
Here's some
whatever.
water.
Yeah, they're just chatting it up, which is really cracked me up and seems so genuine too. Like it just was so funny. But he ends up through this conversation. Jackie says, "I know what you want," and he gives him a number for someone else, and that someone else is Lana.
Lana. Well, this is where the risky business really begins because Lana, played by Rebecca De Mornay, is stunning and Joel is instantly smitten. But I have to ask you, ladies, did you know that these two had a real life romance that formed from this movie? Did y'all know that?
I did not know that.
No, they must have been
Seems
around the same.
obvious.
Yeah, right. They must have been around the same age then. I don't know, but that makes sense.
I don't know, but Tom Cruise has actually had several notable on-screen relationships that turned into real life romances. It was Rebecca De Mornay from this movie, Nicole Kidman from Days of Thunder, and then Penelope Cruz from Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, and
I had forgotten about Penelope Cruz.
Yes.
They were such a
They were
gorgeous
beautiful.
couple.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And then I think he's been rumored to, I don't know if it's true or not, been with some of his co-stars, maybe from some of the Mission Impossible movies. I don't know a lot about those, but there's been rumors I know about that.
Well, Tom has a way with his leading ladies for sure. And in this movie, after they spend the night together, the next morning, Lana asks for $300, which Joel didn't have. Of course not, because he's a high school student. And while he's gone off to try to gather the funds, well, things get worse. Lana takes off with his mom's expensive Steuben glass egg, her prized possession. And I have to say, speaking of risky business, I have 3 teenage sons, and there is no chance of my prized possession just being there on the mantle, just out.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Right.
Because to your story, Missy, pillows can go flying, footballs, wrestling can happen, anything can happen. So I thought that was a little interesting.
Not the most wise parenting decision is what you're saying.
No.
Maybe not. Yeah. And I was also going to say here, when you brought that up about the glass egg, mentioning this was, her prized possession, she really gives us the impression, like we know in the movie at this point that this is something really important and fancy in their household. Well, this leads to a wild chase involving Lana's pimp, Guido. And in fact, it ends up being a wild car chase. And did y'all notice the cars during that chase scene? Yes. I was like,
it always surprises me when I see movies from this time period, which I recognize was a long time ago, but it's still of my time, and the cars look like it's very old-timey.
Yes.
So, right. I'm like, that tank does not need to be on the road. What is good? They're so old. Yeah. It's crazy. But eventually Joel does manage to escape, and he loses him in the Porsche, and Lana moves into his house, like basically moves into his house she's just like cooking breakfast and like, hey, what's up? And she has her friend Vicky, brings her along, and Joel's life becomes more complicated by the minute. He's not completely, you can tell he's a little bit like, oh, there's this beautiful woman in my house, but this isn't really going to work either. And movies and shows like this start making me feel very stressed when the bad things start happening one on top of the other. It kind of is like that Breaking Bad feeling. And
Yes,
everything
yes.
just starts to snowball.
Yes, I completely agree. And oftentimes it is like in these action movies, right? Where you've got action scenes and fight scenes. But even recently, what is it? The Bear, like that movie, it stresses me out so much. And they're just in a kitchen cooking and it stresses me out. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I can't even watch that show.
Yes. Well, speaking of complicated, when Lana accidentally sends Joel's dad's beloved Porsche into Lake Michigan, it's a disaster, right? And anyone getting Ferris Bueller vibes here, right? Like Joel needs some serious cash to repair the car. And he and Lana come up with a risky business plan, turning his house, no, let me rephrase that, turning his parents' house into a one night only brothel.
Oh, so funny. And this is appealing to Joel because girls, but also he is interested in being an entrepreneur. She
He's in
tempts him.
that young entrepreneur club, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And she tempts him by this opportunity to make a quick, albeit risky, buck.
Well, like you said, in girls, I mean, it's probably
And
not
girls.
just the quick buck. It's probably also like, okay. Well,
And also it could get him some good street cred with his friends.
yeah, exactly.
important.
They're thinking he's cool now.
Oh, 100%. And the party is a hit. But just like we were talking about, it can't all be smooth. The Princeton recruiter shows up because his dad told him before he left, this guy's going to call you to set up an interview. Well, he's completely forgotten about that. And the Princeton recruiter shows up during the party. And Joel's like, who are you? And, he takes him kind of like back in his dad's study or something for them to sit down and have the interview. And in the middle of the interview, he's got like his friends beating on the window and and Lana is like wanting to, let me in. I want to get a girl. And Lana comes in. She's like, we really need the room, Joel. And he's like, I'm trying to have my interview. So the interview doesn't go that well.
I mean, like his whole future in his mind in that moment is dependent on that interview. His whole world is just like crazy right now.
But he's gotten himself into trouble.
Yes.
And in typical fashion, teenage boys seem to walk into trouble without really realizing that they're walking into trouble. And even though they are well-intended for the most part, they just can't help themselves.
You're right. Yes.
They can't help themselves. And when Joel realizes the recruiter isn't super impressed, he pops on the Ray-Bans and just lets it go, since he's making a ton of money.
Right. He's acting like Elsa. He's just letting it
let it go. Let it go.
There you go.
Yes, he definitely lets it go because he realizes that he has made enough money to get his dad's car fixed. Thank goodness.
Yes,
Woo.
that gave me a little bit of relief. I'm like, okay, we're making some progress, 2 steps forward. And he and Lana decide to go celebrate with a little one-on-one time on the love train.
Or the lust train, right? But seriously, this was a way to bring more Chicago to the movie, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why they did it. The L train is a big piece of Chicago culture. And so they're on the lust train, we'll say, and it seems like things are going to work out. Everything except for Princeton, of course, right? Like now he's like, I've made this money. That'll be a problem for another day. But when he gets home, he realizes that his house has been cleared out, like completely robbed of everything. And he knows it has to be by Guido. So he calls him up and Guido agrees to make him a deal.
And even though I had seen this before, obviously, when I was rewatching it, I forgot about this. And I was really feeling kind of relieved at this point. I'm like, okay, he's made money. He's picking up the Porsche. He was like walking in, counting the money, and then you're noticing the room's empty. And I started feeling stressed again. And then I realized, oh yeah, like the parents have been calling and checking in all along and letting him know when they're arriving so he can pick them up at the airport. And I kind of hits me. Joel's parents are coming home soon, like soon later that day.
Yeah.
Very soon. And then Guido rolls up to Joel's house with all of the items he stole in a big moving truck, and he sells him his furnishings back piece by piece, including his mother's prized possession, the Steuben egg.
Ta-da. It was just like he was passing out money. Every time a piece came up, he was putting out money. And again,
did y'all wait or go ahead?
No,
I was going to say, did y'all see the little kids in the front yard, like watching the whole thing? They were like,
what's going on here?
Yeah.
I have to say, I got Ferris Bueller Day Off vibes again. The parents are waiting on Joel to pick them up from the airport, and they have to end up calling a cab. And so Joel is like rushing around. He's getting all the furniture back in the house, and his parents are on the way home. And Amanda, I know you're feeling stressed then too. Yes.
So stressed, just like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This is funny though, because you know what I was thinking? Nowadays, if we were calling our kids to pick us up in the airport and nobody answered, it would be a real panic because of the cell phones.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like then it was just like, well, it was so funny because the mom was like, oh, well, something must have come up. And like, that was just how it was.
Yeah.
Like, well, they just must have had a flat tire or got stuck at the market or the grocery or whatever. Like they're
just, we'll see him when we see him. I can't even imagine.
We are just, where are they on Life 360? When are they going to get here? But speaking, Missy, of you talking about the Ferris Bueller's Day Off vibes, I got that a lot during this movie. And here's another fascinating fact. In the movie, Joel's house is located at 1258 Linden Avenue in Highland Park, Illinois. In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Cameron's house, the friend of Ferris, is located at 370 Beach Street, Highland Park, Illinois. And in real life, those locations are just right around the corner from each other.
Wow, that's crazy. There really are a lot of parts of it that gave that Ferris Bueller vibe. But if I can add one more fascinating fact, and it isn't about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but it's interesting. Tom Cruise, he's not necessarily known for being a method actor, but we know that he is known for like his intense dedication to his roles. And, it's like you were saying earlier, Amanda, like with the chase scene, this intense dedication started early because Tom Cruise reportedly spent time living with a local Chicago family because he wanted to immerse himself in the character of Joel. He wanted to understand what it was like to be a privileged high school student in a really affluent neighborhood.
Sign me up for that.
Can you imagine?
Right?
Oh my gosh, can you imagine if we could have found the person who he lived with for a while? Like, tell us about having the young Tom Cruise live in your home. That would have been
probably
fun.
have had to sign an NDA at this point.
Yeah, sure.
That would be fascinating. And speaking of that, Joel's parents walk in their affluent Chicago home just as he is jumping over the couch to sit down. That part made me very, very anxious. We think all is well until his mom somehow notices a crack in her glass egg and she is pissed.
Oh, if she only knew.
Right?
Right. If she had only known that all of her furniture had just been recovered from a pimp in her front yard.
And when you say, Allison, she was pissed, like she got real mad. She like really was like, I am so disappointed.
Oh,
I don't know.
I know.
It was too much.
It was too much.
It was. All I kept thinking was, lady, you left it on the mantle.
Yeah. But I think it was, in my mind, they were trying to make a point. Like he was such a goody two shoes that a crack in an egg would have been just a disappointment to her. And really, if she had only known, she would have realized that it really wasn't that big of a deal in the scheme of things.
You
Right.
are 100% right. And you just said something that's like, I think like very literary, the
Ooh.
crack in the egg. Like it really, I think that
Ah.
you're onto something.
Oh, who knew?
Yeah, like the
Well,
crack in the egg.
yeah.
That's just like, love that. All
Oh,
right.
okay. Well, here's the deal, ladies. In the end, everything turns out okay, which, by the way, wasn't the ending that Brickman had actually wanted. He had planned for a much darker ending for, I guess, all of these social evils he was trying to portray. But the studio, thank goodness, wanted a more upbeat conclusion to the story. And so I'm so glad that what happens is good because it turns out that the recruiter was impressed after all. It may have been the party, it may have been the call girls, it may have been Joel's entrepreneurial skills, but it was not Joel's academic record. But he gets in to Princeton. It's a wild ride, y'all, from start to finish. But Joel comes out on the other side with a whole new perspective on life, don't y'all think?
Yes. And
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. He's like, I feel like he can handle life a little bit better now. But what I thought was funny was you talking about the social evils. And earlier we talked about, the social themes that Brickman was exploring. And I'm like, I would love for him to like make a movie about us now, like with our
Oh,
social media and all.
gosh.
Like,
Can
he's
you
really got some
imagine?
themes to explore now for sure. Um, that takes us to the final scene where we see Joel with Lana and they're out on what looks to be a normal date, like a dinner.
Mhm.
And they're talking about just talking about their future, and it's really cute. Lana says she would like to keep seeing him, and he tells her it'll cost you. You got
I loved
300.
that.
Yeah, he said you got $300. And it's really cute because obviously that's what she says to him after their first night together. And it's a really fun, light way to end it. But I have to ask you, girls, do you think there's any way this relationship could have survived or made it after all of this and in the end?
No, I do not.
No,
Do you,
I don't
Allison?
think so. No, I don't think so. I think, at one point, Joel sort of said he had had enough of the this sort of careless, let it all go lifestyle. He was ready to get back to his regular life, maybe a little less buttoned up, but I'm not sure that he could have moved forward with a call girl as a girlfriend. I don't think that would have fit into his
plan.
Pretentious world, yeah, or his
Yes.
parents' plan for him for sure. Yeah, he tried the what did they call it? The F mentality, and he
F it.
I
Yeah.
think he was wanting to reel that back in some. All right, so here is a question we always ask.
Oh, wait, I was
Allison.
going
Oh
to tell
wait,
you what I thought.
Oh, do
I
tell us.
actually, in my like romantic mind, was like, she could leave Guido and this could work. This might work. She's going
Yeah.
to start a new life and it's going to work out.
I like
You're
to
right.
call that a pretty woman ending, and unfortunately, I think it's primarily in fairy tales.
You're right. You're
Right.
right.
I bet the romantic in me would love that, but I think that
Sure.
it
And Rebecca
probably
De Mornay was so beautiful. I know we talk about Tom and him, but she was so beautiful. Oh,
was
My
beautiful.
in rewatching this movie to prepare for today, my husband sort of saw what I was watching and he said, "Oh, I had such a crush on Rebecca De Mornay."
I love that. All I can think of when I see Rebecca De Mornay is the hand that
hand that
rocks
rocks
the
the
cradle.
cradle.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
is
Why
that an
she's
80s
not in
movie?
more things, I don't know.
I know she was
She's
good.
Wonderful.
She was
Yeah, I
good.
loved her hair too. I just loved her.
She was
Loved her.
precious, a precious call girl. Anyway, we always end, Allison, with the question, and it's an important one. Does this movie stand the test of time by today's standards? What do you ladies think?
Mm. Okay. It held up for me as far as entertainment purposes. Like I was entertained. It's still, you know, I felt like it also held up in the way of obviously it was the 80s, so the pressures were different. But I do feel that, especially now, kids today do get a lot of pressures placed upon
Yeah.
them.
Pressures to succeed,
Mhm,
right? They have to deal with consequences of behaviors.
mhm.
Yeah.
What do you think, Allison?
I think in a lot of ways, it it was very different than it would be today. I would never leave my teenage sons home alone for
For
a
like a
long
week.
period of time. No, never, never in a million years. I thought it was funny that they had this big wild party and no neighbor came over and was like, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" No one called the police. In that regard, nobody posted any of it on Instagram, so nobody got busted. So in that regard, I did not think it stood up. However, I spent a lot of time around teenage boys, and every move that these guys made was very familiar to me. Just earnest and well-meaning, but um, not even
Looking
remotely
to
surprised when they find themselves in horrible trouble, and they just move forward to try to get out of it at any cost.
they can't see the forest for the trees.
Mm-mm.
Um, there was something else I was thinking about Missy. You didn't
Well,
answer
I
though.
was thinking about the helicopter parents of today. Like,
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
right? Like, is that what you were thinking? Like,
Well, similar. Go ahead, and
yeah,
I'll add
just
to it.
that you've got cameras in houses now. You talked earlier about Life 360. Like, it would be hard for someone to have this many consequences, being this many shenanigans, and just be sitting on the couch looking cool when mom and dad came home. The
And nobody
entertainment
knowing.
value
Yeah.
is there, but with today's, as Allison, you said Instagram, et cetera, with the way we are today, where everyone knows everything, they'd never get away with it.
Well, what I was
But
gonna, or go ahead.
I was just going to say, though, that Joel really showed ingenuity.
Yeah, I did.
And I mean, it got him into Princeton. And are we better off with all of the
That's
cameras and everything? I certainly don't ever want to have a situation where my children lose all of my possessions to a pimp. But that said, I kind of like that they had to figure it out. They got
Yeah,
themselves into the trouble. They got to get themselves out of the trouble.
daddy
that
didn't get him out of trouble.
Mm-mm.
that's the thing right there, Allison. I think you just nailed it. Like the idea of I think there's been another episode where I asked, like, are we better off? Are we better off now that we have all of these ways to look at kids? And another giveaway to me about thinking about helicopter parents and just like having access to everything all the time. We would never leave our kids for that period of time during a school week thinking they're going to get themselves to school. They're going to take care of getting there, getting home, all that. And remember, he tries to get in late, and she won't let him in. We would know about that immediately. I mean, people would call, email, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you just can't get away with it. Those are all great perspectives. And Allison, we really want to thank you for joining us today. It's been so much fun.
It really
Thank you for
has
having
been. Did you
me.
have
Thank
fun with
you.
us, Allison?
I did. This was fascinating and a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well,
We're
we
so
hope that
glad you were here.
yeah, and we hope you'll come back with us for another one sometime.
Absolutely.
Well, real fans, if you've never seen Risky Business, it's definitely one to add to your watch list. If you saw it in the 80s and haven't seen it in a while, pop some popcorn, watch it again. Just be sure to save it for after the kids are in bed.
And try some smoked paprika on your popcorn.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Risky Business really showed us that sometimes taking risks can lead to unexpected rewards.
Or consequences.
Yes, but maybe don't try this at home.
Absolutely. And that idea of things spiraling out of control, Amanda, it leads perfectly into our next movie. We've got some clues for you, and here's the first one. The characters think they've found the perfect place to settle down, but it's very far from smooth sailing.
Ooh, good clue. Well, my clue is a couple thinks they have found their dream home. It just needs a little fixing up.
Mm. And the final clue, just as the couple toast a cheers to their new home, they find big trouble awaits them. Any guesses?
Do you think you know, Allison? Don't say it.
I won't say it, but I think I do know, and it is one of my if I'm correct, it's one of my all-time favorites.
Good. Well, you'll have to watch it. Okay, Real fans, we're looking forward to diving into that one next week. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Real Sisters Rewind. And as always, thanks for rewinding with us. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Bye, sister. Love you. Bye,
Love
Allison.
you. Bye.
Bye.